Our first question is going to come from Robert Allen from Triple Play Sports. Go ahead, Robert.
All right, congratulations on the win on Saturday, but turning the corner, how interesting is it to face a guy that you brought out of Division II in Mike Yursich, and he's kind of made the circle from your place to Ohio State. Now he's the offensive coordinator at Texas. And what do you expect in that matchup, Coach?
Well, I'm excited for Mike's career. Mike's earned everything he's gotten to this point. He worked extremely hard. Has a lot of confidence. Smart football coach, he was extremely loyal during the time that he was here, and had a chance to move on and better himself, and eventually be a head coach someday. So, I'm not looking forward to facing him. I know what kind of offensive coach he is, but it is what it is. We keep rolling. It's not the first time we faced guys that have worked for me over the last 10 years.
What did you think when you had him here were his best strengths, and maybe if he had any weaknesses that he got better at when he was here?
Oh, I don't know. Once Mike made the adjustment from his level to this level, which was pretty quick, he's like most guys across the country right now. He's a hard worker. He's loyal. He understands football. He's very aggressive, and he's gotten a little bit better each year. I don't know that he has any weakness that would be different than any other offensive coordinator. If you call a play and you catch him in the right coverage, you made a good call. If you catch him in the wrong coverage, you made a bad call. But overall, just a smart guy. And again, I go back to his loyalty and hard work's what's got him to the point where he is today.
All right, thanks.
Our next question comes from Barry Trammell from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Mike, your defense been playing great and your offense made plays Saturday, but with Spencer back, what's the upside for this offense? How good can this offense be, do you think?
I don't have any idea. We got good skill players. We're coming along a little bit as an offensive line. We've made some strides. We have to be protective somewhat of what we do offensively. We're not in a position to be like we have been the last 10 or 12 years here, where we can just open everything up and Katie bar the door. So as we develop as an offensive line, we'll get a little bit better as an offense throughout the season.
You say you got to be a little careful. That's because of the line situation?
We're not far along right now in the offensive line. We got two guys playing the offensive line that have 3 games experience in their career. So for that reason, 40% of your offensive line doesn't have any experience, so we just have to be a little careful.
Our next question comes from Chris Becker from the O'Colly. Go ahead, Chris.
Coach, good morning.
Morning.
This defense has played pretty well up to this point, but now you've got to play Texas, who has a pretty experienced quarterback, and Sam Ehlinger. What goes into stopping somebody of his caliber?
Well, we had a real challenge last week with Purdy, and a little bit different challenge this week with Sam. Sam is a really big, strong running quarterback. They're going to use 11 personnel and 12 personnel, and they'll design runs for him. And he's not scared to run. He'll run like a tailback. So they gain an extra hat that way. We'll have to be really good up front, make sure we're in our gaps, and not get our eyes violated. Safeties and backers that also have pass coverage as well as run support on a quarterback. So we have to be really good in our run keys this week.
Right, and then this will be the 4th time you faced him in his time at Texas. How much easier or more difficult does it make it to game plan around somebody who's seen the offense and you've played against?
I'm not understanding offense. What do you mean?
So he's played against you guys now 4 times this weekend. How much more, going into game planning, how much easier or more difficult does it make to game plan for somebody who's played you guys that many times?
Well, they're in a different system this year. They have a new coordinator. So the years in past, there are a few similarities, but the rest of it you can throw out the window. You're game planning for a different scheme this year, but you're also game planning for a very, very efficient quarterback that can run and throw and plays really hard. Those are more difficult to prepare for than necessarily what the schemes are.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach.
Our next question comes from Bill Haston from the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Bill.
And Mike, what are you seeing from Texas offensively that indicates to you that you see Yursic's fingerprints on what they're doing offensively? What are you seeing from Texas?
Well, there's a lot of 11 personnel. There was more 12 personnel against Baylor. I think that, there are some things in there that Yurcich is involved in, and then there's some similarities from what they've been in the past. So it looks like that they've come together on some sort of a bipartisan agreement to run on offense. All the quarterback run stuff, your quarterback power and things that you see, that's not necessarily what Mike's done in his history. That's some carryover from what they've done there in the past.
So you've coached against Meacham, Dana, Wickline. You and Yursich had a lot of success together, won 5 times against Texas. But when Saturday rolls around, facing Yursich is no different than facing Dana or any of these other guys. You know what I mean? Just business, and you push the other stuff aside.
Yeah, I don't even know who's on the sideline. When we play OU, I forget Kale's over there. I'm involved in the game and thinking and whatever, and I just I forgot Les was coaching at Kansas. That's never been a factor. There's some issues with having as many coaches as we've had that are scattered throughout this league, but not necessarily on game day as much as just concepts, terminology, communication, planning, different areas like that are a little more difficult than it was when I started my career, and I didn't have coaches scattered all through the league.
If you don't mind, one quick follow-up to Barry's question. You talked about the O-line, but do you think too, Mike, when Sanders gets more game reps and less rust, when he just plays more, that will be a factor in elevating your offense to the levels it's been at pretty typically over the years?
He played pretty good. There was times that he did things that I don't think that he would have if he didn't get injured last year and would have had the 5 or 6 games under his belt, and then the 3 or however many he missed this year. He's still not really to that point where he's an experienced player. And I said this after the game, his composure was much better than it has been in his career here at Oklahoma State. That's a start for him. He needs to stay level-headed. I love a competitive, fiery nature, but I'm not necessarily want a guy to be that way at quarterback if you can't control his emotions with all the information that we give them to play quarterback here. So I would tend to agree with what you're saying, that eventually he's going to get better and through reps and game experience.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Garen Emig from the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Garen.
Mike, it's been a while since you played Tulsa, but I'm wondering if you recall the impact that Zaven Collins had on that game, the linebacker for TU.
He's a good football player. Guy's going to play in the NFL would be my guess. Certain players that we compete against, we have to know where they are on the field. And based on what their position is, his being a guy that can be a run defender and a pass defender, we have to be aware of where he's at during the game. Our quarterbacks know where he's at during the game, or they are supposed to know where he's at. So when you compete against teams that have a number of guys like that, it becomes more difficult to understand where they are on the field.
Okay, appreciate that.
Our next question comes from Scott Wright from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Scott.
Mike, you talked about the inexperience of a couple of guys on your line. Is it pretty impressive to see what Jake Springfield has become in such a short time, being a former walk-on?
Jake's come a million miles in a short time. His best years are ahead of him. The one thing that he's lacking is experience, and we can't do anything about that. We can just try to get him a little bit more each day. We're really excited about him. His off season, his body should change completely. His strength levels, his ability to move his feet. He's a cerebral player. He's keeps his composure. He's competitive. He likes football. So, if you're talking specifically about him and where he's at from a month ago, he's come a long ways, but he still has a long ways to go just based on experience.
How has he played to this point?
He's played good. I mean, he's done, he was average against Iowa State. I mean, he was good against Kansas. So that's what we expect from those guys. And that's kind of where we're at. It's, the question earlier is we have some limitations right now based on where we're at in the offensive line. So we just try to fight and scrape and score enough points to win each week.
Thanks, Mike.
Our next question comes from Jenny Carlson from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Jenny.
Hey, Mike. Looking at your safeties, obviously Trey and Colby and Tanner, even on Saturday, making some big-time plays for you guys. To my recollection, Trey was more of a cornerback coming out of high school, Colby more of a linebacker. When those guys get moved to safety, is there something you guys are looking for to maybe put those guys in more of a safety role? And why have those guys been fairly successful?
About 3 or 4 years ago, we've changed our thought process in recruiting in our organization. We've switched more scholarships to defense, and then it's either 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember, with the recruiting classes, that we've eliminated recruiting corners and safeties and linebackers. We recruit a certain player that we feel like can play any of those 5 spots, and they're fast enough to cover. You might have a corner that's playing a free safety spot. Traditionally, you take a 210 or 215-pound guy and put him at safety, and playing in this league, he can't cover anybody. If he's 215 pounds and he can cover slot receivers in this league, he's going to be playing in the NFL. So we don't, a lot of times we don't bring guys in ready-made to play in the NFL here at Oklahoma State. So we're looking for more guys that can run and have ability to make plays when the ball's in the air. So when you talk about Bernard, you talk about McAllister, you talk about Peel, talk about Trey, even Harper. Little Harper is a guy that bounces around, plays different spots. Those are all guys that we have brought in here to fit what we think the style of play needs to be defensively in this league to give us the best chance to win.
Do you think about, those guys like Colby and Trey and Tanner, and they get listed as starting safeties, but do you think of them that way, or do you think of it more loosely with that change in philosophy?
Yeah, we have 5 guys that play. You're playing with corners and really playing with 3 safeties. Malcolm Rodriguez has bumped inside. He got so big that we had to move him inside, and because at some point his ability to cover really fast guys in the slot was not as good as it was when he showed up here, because he put on 20 pounds of muscle. So I guess what I'm saying is we're trying to take fast guys that can cover, and then we'll move them wherever we need to move them in those spots. We don't necessarily consider them safeties. Mm-hmm. We're trying to find guys that can cover and then teach them how to tackle and get guys down in space.
Is it partially too about how much they change with Rob? Like a guy like Malcolm, as you mentioned, you add that much weight. I assume any of those guys could add a certain amount of weight, but is that sort of part of the determining factor too? And we're not all we're not always accurate in how much weight and body mass that a young man could put on. So we might recruit a legitimate corner that's 175 pounds in high school, and we feel like that he could play one of those spots where they have to cover receivers. Mm-hmm. But if he gains 20 pounds, then he's not going to be back there playing in a spot where he's high over the top of the coverage. He's going to be an invert guy where he's not exposed as much, is a term we use, to speed. So we move those guys around, and we have the flexibility with our coverages with what Jim is doing, that we can adjust guys based on the teams we play each week and what their strength is offensively, in our opinion. Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Our next question comes from Jason Elmquist from the Stillwater News Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning.
Over the summer, we heard from the Big 12 basketball coaches that they were coming to United to give players the day off for Election Day. Obviously, it's different because you guys are in the middle of your season. Has there been any change of plans of days off, or possibly altering your practice schedule on Tuesday to allow those who want to vote the opportunity to maybe have a little bit better chance to do so?
I'm not sure what's happened. I've heard those discussions. I haven't really paid attention. I think that's a week from tomorrow, isn't it?
Yep.
So I'm guessing somebody. I will make next week's schedule Wednesday morning, so somebody will let me know what's going on. I'm not sure what all happened. What time do the polls open?
I believe 8 a.m.
Polls open at 8, and they stay open till when?
Till 7.
Yeah, I would think that they would have it. I mean, I'm going to vote, and I'm going to find a time to do it during the day. So I'm not sure what the NCAA is going to do, but I would think if the 8 to 7 is 11 hours, I would think at some point they would find a time to swing by and vote. But we'll follow the rules, whatever somebody says to do. I mean, I'm guessing if you guys have to vote, you still have to go to work.
Yeah. Well, and then obviously for a lot of these guys, this is going to be their first time getting to vote in a presidential election on your team. Have you discussed the importance of them utilizing this opportunity?
We're on our 3rd year of mandatory enrollment to vote. 3 years ago, we had a meeting with them and told them they all needed to register and they needed to learn how to vote in order to be a part of this country. Obviously, because of we're at a state school, I don't make it mandatory, but I highly recommend it. And that was 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, and last year, and then again this year. That's been a big part of what we've said around here. How many of them actually registered, I don't know, because I don't have the authority to make that decision. But that's something that's been talked about in this organization for over 3 years.
Then a quick football question. How impressed were you from just a football IQ standpoint of true freshman Brendan Presley being able to turn around so quickly on that punt to down it inside the 5 on Saturday?
Well, with what he's done in his career, I don't think anything he does here in that type of situation will surprise any of us. He was a two-way player, very, very, very good high school football player that, it wasn't uncommon for him to have 15 catches and have 20 carries in the game and play every game at corner. And so Brennan loves to play football. He's highly competitive. He's tough. He's not scared, and he's loyal. And so he's going to make a lot of football plays here at Oklahoma State over the next 4 years.
Thanks for your time, Mike.
Our next question comes from Barry Trammell from the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Mike, you're in a similar situation to where you were in 2011. You're high up in the polls, you're unbeaten. You're obviously a contender for the conference championship and a playoff spot. How do you compare that 2011 team midseason to where you're at now?
Well, we had, 5 guys on offense that were NFL players. We had 2 first-round picks on offense. Defensively, we had, I think, 3 guys that actually played in the NFL. So, you can go through where we're at. Probably not as many NFL players on this team as we had on that team. If you're talking about a talent level, most teams that win a conference championship out of the 5 Power 5 conferences are going to have quite a few legitimate NFL players sprinkled in them, in my opinion. And you'll generally have at least 2 first-round picks. So there's some similarities, but I don't know that we would actually have as much NFL talent on this team as we did on that team.
That team was really good on defense. I don't know that we knew how good it was until the end of the season. We seem to know how good this clearly is an excellent defense. Is this defense up to the standards of 2011, do you think, just on how you're playing?
2011 gave up quite a few yards and had a lot of takeaways. They got off the field with takeaways. I think we were in the top 5 in the country that year in turnover margin. I'm not for sure, but we were up there pretty high. They got off the field with turnovers. This year's team has a chance I said this 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. We'll know a lot more now. I said 4 weeks. We're going to know a lot more now in 3 weeks. We play 2 or 3 more games, and we have an open date. I'm not for sure when that is, but during that time, we'll have a pretty good idea because we have seen a variety of offenses with really good quarterback play. We got our first dose of it last Saturday with 2 and 3 tight end offense. It's a little bit unusual for this league with a potential NFL quarterback in Purdy. We're going to have the same challenge this week. And then as we move forward, we'll find out exactly where these guys are. I will say that I'm not hesitant in telling you the same thing I've told them, that they do have maturity, they do have depth, they do have speed. So if they're willing to put time and effort in, if they're willing to focus and absorb information during the week, if they're willing to practice hard, they have a chance to be a really good defense. That's their choice. So do I like where we're at defensively? Sure I do. Do I have concerns with the teams we play coming up? Sure, because it's a little bit different approach with each one of these guys, and we're going to find out a lot more over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
We're down to our last couple questions, so we've got to get Coach on the Big 12 call here shortly. Our next question is going to come from Robert Allen from Triple Play Sports. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, there we go. Unmuted. Yeah, Coach, along the same theme, I was asking a lot about Mike Yursich. Chris Ash is their new defensive coordinator, and just looking at them from a glance, they seem to be maybe the heaviest forefront defense in the conference.
You know, they're a 4-2-5. They're 4 press on the edge, coverage-wise. They're going to challenge your receivers. Quite a bit of zone, more of a traditional style of play. I mean, I've gotten into them a little, not a lot, trying to finish up on Iowa State myself, but the coaches have gotten in a little bit deeper. But from what I'm seeing, that's what their scheme is on defense at Texas with him being there this year.
You still feel good about the head start your guys get each week from the analysts, Bill Clay, Chris Thurman, Gary Gibbs?
Those guys are a big part of our team. The Senior Citizens Club, as I call them, they give and have great information for me. When you have guys like Clay and Gibbs and Thurman who are still involved in coaching, they got 40 plus years. They've been coordinators. They've been in big programs. They've been in programs where you have to fight every week to survive. Some of them have had NFL experience. They've been around young people all their life. They have invaluable information for me as a coach. And once you get to the point where they're at, they don't have any egos. So they're just here to make Oklahoma State football better. And I lean heavily on those guys for information on the field and the attitude of our team and what my approach would be as a head coach when I communicate with them week to week. And those guys are a tremendous resource for me in a lot of different ways, much less football. What you're talking about is X's and O's, and for both sides of the ball, they're excellent. You can't really have enough guys like that. And the difference is they're at a point in their career where their egos they don't care anymore. They just want to be a part of the team. They like coaching football. They like being involved. And they're very, very important to our organization.
Thanks.
And our final question is going to come from Bill Haston of the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Bill.
Mike, in 2011, you were number 1 on takeaways. You had 44. The next highest total in the country was 30. So,
see, my memory's good. I was right.
Yeah. Well, you said top 5. I mean, you were top 1 by a bunch.
I was top 5, but 1's in the top 5.
That's right. So I just wanted to ask you, with regard to the series against Texas the last 10 years, I mean, I guess the consistency of winning is probably your favorite characteristic of your program now, but I mean, where does the Texas series fit in, because you had such a hard time beating those guys for a while, and then now you've won 7 of 10. But just where does the Texas series rank in your mind with regard to a characteristic that you want to have your program defined by?
There's two things. In most years, our players, well, let me back up. I don't know if we have anybody on our team that was even offered by Texas. That's fairly consistent. We have 85 players on scholarship. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think we have anybody on our team that had a Texas offer. Now, we usually get 2 or 3 guys committed a year, and Texas will come in and take them in December. Then guys will flip and sign with Texas. But I don't know that we've had any here that Texas has actually offered that I can remember. So I think our players enjoy that game. I guess you would have to take a poll with our fans how they feel about that. I'm not sure. But arguably and or in somebody's opinion, each season across the board, Texas is going to be the most talented team in this league, just on the top 85 or top 130. I mean, somebody's opinion. So our players know that we have to have really quality work. Our coaches have to have good plans. We have to try to really lean on our strength compared to what maybe their weaknesses could be. I mean, I don't really remember when you play them, they have a lot of weaknesses from a skill standpoint. So, you know, you work together as a team. There's 11 guys on the field, both sides of the ball and on special teams. And so it's just a game, but because of location, I guess because of the history of their organization, it becomes a little bit bigger to the people in the state of Oklahoma. So we have to really work hard to make sure our players understand it's all about practice and it's about functioning and doing what we think's best and not getting out of our box. I mean, that's really who we are at Oklahoma State, right? We do what we do. We don't get out of our box. You know, if we're going to play on a par 5 and we can really hit the ball a long ways, we hit a driver. And if we hit a good drive, I don't mind going for the green on number 2. But if I don't, I need to hit an 8-iron and I need to lay up. Don't try to hit another driver and take a chance of hitting the water. That's really what we have to do here at Oklahoma State, and we've leaned on that for 16 years.
Hey, Coach, thank you so much. We've got to get you on that Big 12 call, though, next.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.